On Sporting Heroes today, a former manager of the English national football team pays homage to a Scottish footballing legend who, in his pomp, was nicknamed the King. Graham Taylor began his footballing career as a player in the lower leagues with Grimsby and Lincoln. After 5 years of managing Lincoln, he took Watford from the old 4th Division to the top flight, as well as a trip to Wembley for an FA Cup final. He then took over Aston Villa and he took them within one place of winning the league title. Graham then fulfilled his ambitions to become England manager in 1990. His sporting hero is a man who graced Old Trafford in the 60s and the 70s. Denis Law was the king, and in an 11-year spell, he scored 237 goals in 404 games. He also helped United to 2 league titles and to become European champions.
You know, whoever thought I would be here interviewing my hero, my footballing hero, Denis Law. But what I want to say to you first of all, Denis, because I know you're sharp and I know you're quick, I've just read your book, so I know everything about you now. So let's have a good time and let's talk about Denis Law, European Footballer of the Year in 1964, only the second Briton to get that title. And you look at his career, the clubs he played for, went out to Torino for a year as well. So he knows about that international side of things. But of course, part of the Law, Best, Charlton trio. And you notice I said your name first, Denis Law. What about that career? Where did it all start, Denis?
It started at Huddersfield Town. Well, before that, of course, at school in Aberdeen when I was a young boy, 9 years of age, played for the school team. And then I was invited to go down to Huddersfield, which I'd never heard of. I didn't know where it was or whatever.
Tell them the name of your manager.
Well, I was very fortunate to play under 2 of the greatest managers that the game has seen. And one, the first one, of course, was the great Bill Shankly, who not only, because he was Scottish, I was only 15 years of age. I'd never been away from Aberdeen. The furthest I'd been away was, I think, about 20 mile. So there I am in a foreign country, and he really became like a father to me. So I was very fortunate that Bill Shankly was the manager at that particular time.
Yeah, I mean, that is great in many respects. I know we shoot on, we don't have to. Of course, the other great manager was Sir Matt Busby as well, wasn't he?
Later on, well, when I was 18, I got my first cap for my country. And of course, Sir Matt was the manager, and of course he had just survived the Munich air disaster in February of that particular year. He was very fortunate to actually keep his life. He was in a very dangerous situation. So when he got the manager's job after the close season of that particular year in '58, he became the Scottish manager. He selected me to play for my country. So from then on, of course, I knew Sir Matt. Well,
I became a professional footballer in '62 with Grimsby Town, who were then in what we would call the second division.
Nice fish there, don't they?
Yes,
well,
yeah.
Lovely.
They used to give fish, didn't they? You know, I think they used to give fish to the referee's room before the game, so that we would get some decisions go our way. But that's
well, of course, my father was a trawlerman in the North Sea off Aberdeen for 40 years, so you know I know all about the fish, which is good fish and which is bad fish,
But in 1962, I became a professional footballer at Grimsby, and I was in digs. You were put in digs those days. Yeah. And there was in digs a young boy, just a little bit younger than me, who played, John Wakeham his name was, and he played local football. What did he play? Who did he support? You'll have to do it for us. The sleeve, everything. Now, he was not a professional, but that's where, obviously, every time, every Sunday, he would go out like that and go that to me. And then when he came back every Sunday, he would go back, yes! And I'd say, how do you get on? He'll say, we lost 3-0. What are you doing that for?
Again.
And of course, it's your big trademark in many respects, isn't it? Was that just on scoring goals, or how did all that happen?
I really don't know how it came about. I'm sure it must have started in Italy. Yeah. Where, you know, without their hands, they can't talk, can they? I mean, that's their life. So I would think so. And of course, at that particular time as well, I had a great, you know, my nose is not the smallest nose in the world. and I was having, you know, always dripping. So to get the sleeve and to wipe my nose was just, it was ideal.
So that's why you always played in long sleeves, and the short sleeves are a waste of time for you.
No, don't like short sleeves. No. When I was selected to play for Scotland as well, they had the short sleeve, and I said, hey, excuse me, but I can't play in those. I've got to have the long sleeve. And of course, this sleeve was brick hard. This one was okay. Yes. So that was, I don't know where it came. It must have.
It's all about.
I'm sure it was Italy.
No, I mean, I can see now. The reason was you had a snotty nose. It's let's get a long shirt. Let's wipe it off.
No.
You know, so you flick your arms back. Centre half gets all your snot over his face.
Well, we had a centre half in those days who was a very, very tough player, and played for England at cricket as well. You don't know if you remember him, a guy called Ken Taylor.
Ken Taylor, I remember.
Yeah.
At Huddersfield, you're talking about. Are you talking about at Huddersfield now?
At Huddersfield, yeah. He was a centre half.
Yeah, I remember him.
And you know, he was a tough guy.
Yeah.
I mean, a real tough guy. Yeah. But I never got to what he did. He had a hanky down his pants here, and every so often during the game, he'd pick it up and blow his nose and put it back. So it looked a bit feminine to me, you know. I thought, like, this tough guy, these people don't know him.
I suppose.
This guy would, like, kick his granny.
Well, I was going to say, I suppose what he was saying, that's called being a gentleman, and then he would kick you. You know, because centre-halves in those days, let's be honest, centre-half in those days, not just centre-halves, but defenders, tackling from behind was allowed, tackling from all over was allowed. Yeah. If they really, you know, if you'd sort of hurt them, they would say, get you back. The referee might say, then that's 1-1, now cut it out.
Yeah.
But you yourself, Dennis, and I'm saying this on your behalf, you were quick, you were sharp, you were great in the air, and your reaction to getting to the ball first in the box was first class. But also, you knew how to look after yourself, didn't you?
Well, I think that was given really when I was at school from my mum and dad, really.
Yeah.
Was to say, you know, there was a bit of bullying going on in those particular days. And was always the answer was I was quite slim, really. And my mum used to say, well, you know, if he hits you, you got to hit him back, because if you don't, they'll keep hitting you. And that came into the football side, i.e., if they kick you, you better kick them back, because if you don't, they'll keep kicking you. So I got into quite a lot of trouble at times. I was always innocent, you know. You realise that, of course.
Yeah, well, you were my hero, so you were always innocent. I can tell you.
It was a retaliation rather than instigation for me. It was a retaliation because the guy kicked me and I kicked him back and I got sent off. Yeah. So I had a few. Yeah.
Not many times, though, did you?
Well, not really, no, considering what I was doing. Yeah, I think I was sent off 4 times. And the nice thing about it was always at Christmas and New Year. So I got 4 weeks. The first one was 4 weeks, which is a lot of games in those days. So I was back in Aberdeen for Christmas and New Year. And the following year, I did the same. I got another 4 weeks. And they must have thought, he's enjoying this. So when I was sent off again, I got 6 weeks, which was really lovely.
Are you telling me that my footballing hero planned his sendings off so he could spend Christmas at home with his family?
Of course, I didn't plan it. Just the referees made a mistake sending me off, and the FA had to do something, i.e. on your bike.
Well, let's move on. Huddersfield, where do we move to then?
You asking me, or do you not know?
I'm asking. Oh, no, I know, but I'm asking you if you can remember, because as you know, we all get older.
That particular time, Bill Shankly, who went to Liverpool, and of course, when Shanks went to go to Liverpool, I automatically thought that I would be joining him. He was my mentor. Liverpool were in the same division as Huddersfield. Looked as though they were going to be up to the Premier, well, the first division in those days. Yeah. But unfortunately, Liverpool didn't have the money to pay for the transfer fee, which was something in the region of, I don't know, whatever they were asking, 40, 50,000 pounds or whatever.
Which was a hell of a lot of money in those days.
Which was a lot of money in those days. Yeah. And I landed up at Manchester City with another Scottish manager, Les McDowell. Yes. So, and it wasn't very particularly far from Huddersfield, so you know it was a nice move. They were in the first division. They were the first team I'd watched on television when they won the FA Cup
Yes.
in 55, 56. In 55 they could beat 56, so I knew quite a few of the players. So I was quite happy to join them. But I thought that Shankly would have come in for me, and I would have been a Liverpool player.
How old was you?
I was
then?
18.
So you've already now, you're into your first
21,
move. Yeah.
1961. 21 when I went to Manchester City.
Yeah.
But 5 years basically with Huddersfield, and then 21.
Were you disappointed in not following Shankly? Was there a degree of disappointment?
Well, I
there?
felt a bit sort of, this was like a father figure to me, and he's gone to Liverpool, which was, you know, as we all know, Shankly then made Liverpool the team that they were going to become.
They were then in the second division.
You know,
course,
you could tell that something was going to be happening if they had taken Shanks from Huddersfield to there. There's something's going to happen. So it was just a pity, really, that they didn't have that money. Don't forget, this was a tremendous amount of money.
Yes.
I think the highest fee before that was Albert Quixol. I don't know, I can't remember it. I'll be telling a lie if I knew what it was, but it was something like £24,000. So this was a huge amount of money. And don't forget,
news.
and being Scottish as well, there was no percentage of me. I was going for nothing, which I cried a lot for.
I bet you did as well. So you go to Manchester City, you have this, but hold on, where do you go to then? After you first
After
up at Manchester
City, of course, the wage facilities had been broken, weren't they?
Right,
like Johnny Haynes had come in, they had scrapped the £20 a week, and all of a sudden players could get money that they never ever dreamed of. Johnny Haynes got £100 a week, which was, you know, unbelievable, really, because it was 5 times your £20 a week wage. But looking further afield, there was Italy. Italian clubs were John Charles from Leeds United. They went to Juventus, and they were offering a lot more than £100 a week. And so therefore, when Gigi Perinacci, who was a scout for Torino, came and said, you know, we'd like to buy to Manchester City, we'd like to take Dennis away, they'd offer me a certain figure, and I didn't fancy that. So I landed, and I thought the experience of going to Italy would be really good. But of course, I was only young in those days, and I thought Italy was sunshine more or less all the time. I know a lot better as the years went on, but little did I realise that Torino was just on the doorsteps of the Alps. So in the winter, we had a foot of snow. So things drastically changed as we go. And apart from anything, the people, I loved Italy. The people were lovely. The food was lovely. And don't forget, I was single in those days. The ladies were quite nice. But
no, the ladies were lovely.
No, the ladies were lovely.
You don't have to say quite nice because your wife is probably watching this. Just say
the ladies were lovely. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you might cut that out.
You might cut that bit out. Yeah.
But what I went for was basically the football.
Yeah.
And the football was awful.
Yeah, disappointed.
Football was very defensive. Whoever scored first near enough seemed to be they would win the game because they just closed shop. Our team, Torino, did exactly the same. If we scored, we'd get thingy. And the 2 guys up front were Joe Baker, of course, who eventually went to Arsenal. We were the 2 guys up front. We got kicked from one end of the field to the other. But I never regretted going to Italy because I learned so much. I did learn a bit of the Italian language as well, but I loved to. The food was, you know, I learned the food was different. The wine was lovely, and I learned the football as well. We were marked basically with 2 guys on it, both of us. So when I came back to England and Manchester United, I felt I wasn't being marked at all. I had so much room in the game. So looking back through that particular year I had in Torino was, although enjoyable, not enjoyable for a good part of the time, it was a great experience of coming back.
You moved back to Manchester and Manchester United buying you from Torino, yes?
Well, I moved back to United knowing full well that I knew the manager. I knew what kind of football that his teams would like to play. And the beauty about it was I'd already been in Manchester with Manchester City.
Yeah.
I went back to my old digs that I'd been when I was at City. I knew the people. I knew what I was going back to. I knew what type of football that United. And don't forget, they are rebuilding the team. They have lost half of their team in the Munich air disaster of '58. So they're in the process of building a new team. Yeah. And I was in at that beginning when Sir Bobby, who survived the crash, was their most famous player and was going to become the most famous player ever anyway. So it really was a joy just to join them, to see how they were going to rebuild the team. And then, as you know, George Best came on the scene, and all of a sudden we had a bit of a team. Yeah. We nearly got relegated the first season.
I was just going to bring you into that, because the first season, seeing all these named players, I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be United, but you had a very shaky season. Can I just, before I said that, you answer that, was there in those days any resentment to you, having been a Manchester City player and coming back and playing for Manchester United?
None whatsoever. No, I went back to my digs.
Yes.
But they were City people, and I went back there. So no, it was a different ball game in those days.
Right, yeah. And now
as the years went on, you know yourself, the media came into it, so there was not a great deal of privacy. The games were all like, you know, there was a different. No, we were great friends with the great City team later on in the year, like Mike Summerby and Francis Lee. Yeah, Francis Lee and Mike Summerby, you know, Colin Bell.
Yeah.
We were pals. Yeah. We were enemies on the pitch. But as soon as the game was over, we would be out having a pint together.
And you would have no reaction from supporters or anything like that?
Absolutely not.
No, different world. Different world, isn't it now?
You know, really, Mike Summerby was a very good pal of mine. But we were enemies on the game. Yeah. And he knew that, and I knew that. Yeah. The fans knew that. We battled and battled. Yeah. But once the game was over, hi, shake a hand, you fancy a beer.
But your spell at United, which is, you know, a lot what many people do remember, that spell there was tremendous, really. It ended so well. You've mentioned already Charlton, and you've mentioned Best. Some tremendous players, other players in there as well. Harry Gregg in goal, wasn't there?
Plenty.
What a good goalkeeper he was as well.
Well, you know yourself, being a manager on many occasions, and probably being manager of England, probably the most difficult job to manage a country in the world, and one that no matter what you do, you're going to get the chop anyway, aren't you?
Definitely.
Whatever happens.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, comes across there. Like.
Yeah, whatever. You know, it's just probably the most thankless job, but one that an Englishman, like a Scotsman, that would be the one that they were looking for. It to be England manager must have been the
you can't say no.
Nicest
I don't
thing.
think, as an Englishman, I don't think you can say no to it.
Absolutely
you know?
not.
And but what you're saying here, you've got a Manchester United situation where you really couldn't say no to joining and it was just that first. I remember that first, because by this, you know, with John Wakeham, I'm sort of a committed Denis Law watcher and seeing everything. And I can't believe. I mean, John was always going on. We're walking away with the league, and in that first year when you didn't, I couldn't believe. Why did it just take this time to gel together, or did you bring more players?
If you remember, I don't know how good your memory is. Mine's is not too clever, but that was a year. That was a year when we had a severe winter. Do you remember that?
Yeah, 62.
Where we didn't play for 10 weeks. 10 weeks, not playing, because the pitches were frozen. We went a couple of times to Southern Ireland to play friendly games. But you can imagine, you haven't played a competitive game for about 10 weeks. We were doing considerably good at the beginning, and then once the break went, for some reason,
couldn't pick it up.
We just, you know, we nearly got relegated.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in '62, I was still a young boy at Grimsby Town, and this winter, as you quite rightly say, was horrific.
Horrendous.
And all of a sudden, I found my job as a professional footballer was picking the ice off one part of the pitch so that the first team players could come and practice on it whilst we went to the other thing.
The other side,
and I can remember thinking to myself, what have I come into? I did not become a professional footballer to pick ice, but it was a horrific winter, wasn't it?
Well,
It's
never been
football.
anything like it.
I think there were certain clubs that never played for about 13 weeks.
No, and as I say, we went to Southern Ireland, which was one of the few places around that part of the world that we could actually play a game.
Yeah.
So I think that I'm taking that as an excuse why we didn't.
Well, I know you're not telling any fibs at all because it was a horrible winter. But of course, after that, and I think Sir Matt probably signed a few. Was Connolly signed at that?
Who?
Time? Was it Connolly? Connelly?
Yeah,
was
Connolly, yeah. John Connolly, yes.
Yeah, who basically, I'm like, I never thought he got the real credit as to what he was. But those players came in and you knitted together and you became an absolutely superb Manchester United side, didn't you?
Well, as I said to you before, we nearly, with nearly getting relegated, but we had a nice end to the season because we went and won the FA Cup, which was, for me at that particular time, and young boys at that particular time, the greatest thing was to play in a cup final at Wembley. That would be your ambition, to play in a cup final at Wembley in front of 100,000 people. But not only play in the final, but to win it and then go up and get your medal from the Queen or whatever. This was just something that you would, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, 8 years before, I was still at school. Now I'm walking up Wembley. So that was, although we nearly got relegated, we won the FA Cup. From then on now, we're a bit more confident. And as you say, John came into the squad and we started to have a real game. But don't forget, we had Pat Creran, Nobby Stiles, as you say, Harry Gregg, Shea Brennan, Tony Dunn. All of a sudden, we started to get a team together. David Hurd, who came from Arsenal,
forward, great player,
great centre forward, and all of a sudden, so for that next sort of 5 years, that was a lovely time at Manchester United, and it was lovely to think there was Sir Matt who nearly died in the crash, 58, and then in 68, 10 years later, I know we're jumping forward, but 10 years later, there he was picking up the European Cup, which he got the teams of England into Europe. That was his legacy, was to introduce Europe by the English team.
Can you just tell me this, you mentioned all about the cup final, you mentioned all about, what do you feel about it now? I mean, on Saturdays, on the cup final, that was the day, wasn't it? That was the day when the country came to a stop, 3 o'clock kick-off, that was all. Things have changed now. Now, have you got any views on that?
You know something, you're getting like me, I'm getting old and grumpy.
Yeah,
we're getting, right.
Well, you can guess what my views are by the way I've asked you the question.
Absolutely. The cup final, no matter who was in it, you met in somebody's house, well, a friend of mine, we met in friend of mine's house at 12 o'clock, and we'd watch everything. The teams in the hotels with the cameras for the first time were able to go there, talk to the players, how's it doing, on the bus. It was a day, it was like Christmas, wasn't it? You know, it was just one of those days that you didn't miss. And no matter who was in it, even your bitterest enemies were in it, you watched the cup final.
But I'll tell you one of the things about that. Yeah, but I'll tell you one of the things, because in those times, and anybody listening, it was the only football match on television. Live. So that is a massive change. I mean, even both of us, we've seen a lot of things, but that is a massive change.
But even so, the FA Cup final was probably one of the greatest tournaments in the world, and most famous. Now, I'm afraid to say, it's
well, they've moved things about, and there are a lot of games. It's not the same. But then again, things move on. Do you? Of course. Everything moves on. Look, I've seen pictures of you, and I've also played in them myself. Of the mud that you played in. They weren't football pitches. They were mud pitches that you and I both played on.
Yes.
You were a lot better than me, but at least because you skimmed it.
No, I was with maybe better players.
Well,
in the side.
But I used to watch you, and I used to think, how does he get over that mud so quickly? You were quick, you were sharp, and you were brave. And I'm not going to let you answer that, because I think you agree with that anyhow.
I do not. No, whatever people think of me, then I've got to.
And you're a great goal scorer as well. You know, the things about for me, the goals that you've scored, there's always some, I assume, not being a goal scorer myself.
Yeah.
The ones that you know were lucky, and know the ones that you know that people say were great goals. But just give me, you know, is there such a thing in your life as the greatest goal you scored? Do you have one?
I can't really answer that, can you? Because the answer I would give wouldn't be very nice.
Right.
So I'm not telling you.
All right. Okay.
I'll tell you after the show.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't, for goodness sake, tell me it was that goal that got somebody relegated.
Oh, no.
Don't let the viewer even think that.
No.
We can't go near that.
That goal was a fluke.
Yeah.
That was a fluke.
The one we're talking about is a goal that Dennis scored that actually relegated Manchester United, if we can put it as clear as that, when he'd gone back to Manchester City. But viewers, you've heard, that was a fluke.
It was a fluke
goal.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had no idea where the goal was. Yeah. I'd never backheeled a goal in my life, so I never would even attempt to backheel it.
Yeah, I know. I brought it up, and I bet you get reminded about it far too often for your life.
Occasionally. When I say we, my good lady and I, we got 4 sons and a daughter, and one son is a City fanatic. So I've got to be very careful how I sort of, you know, who do you... So I get away with what team? Aberdeen. Yeah. I support Aberdeen. So
Aberdeen. I think that's very sensible to do that.
But you get back to the pitches.
Yeah.
A great many things have changed in the game today. In today's game, the money, in fact, is just enormous. I don't know how it will carry on. I don't know how teams will be able to keep paying that tremendous amount of money. So you miss that. We all do. And it would be false to say that you didn't. We all do. We'd like to earn a bit more. But the thing that stands out to me more than anything, well, not more than anything, but more than the money, is the state of the football pitches. To be able to play on a football pitch like that for the whole season, the only time we played on a pitch like we have today is if you got to Wembley. The pitches are fantastic. So you can imagine how good the players of yesteryear would be playing on pitches like that when, as you know, you played in that particular time. By the middle of November-ish, it was not. You couldn't pass the ball.
Absolutely.
You had to chip it, didn't you? Because the mud. Yeah. And don't forget, in that particular time as well, most of the teams, we trained on the ground. We didn't have a training ground.
Correct.
So the pitch was being used more or less all the time. Yeah. So, but you look at pitches today, everyone went. I was at Manchester City's last game of the season at Main Road. They invited more or less all the players who were still alive to attend the last game of the season. And we all went on the field. And don't forget, this is the last game ever at Main Road. It was like Wembley. It was unbelievable. This is the last game of the season. So apart from a lot of other things, the boots have changed. You know, there are a great many have changed.
But the pitches.
The pitches, to me, are a love to play in those.
Well, there used to be a saying, I can well remember it in those days, that if a team got off to a good start early, straight at the start of the season, they used to say, yeah, but wait till the heavy pitches come.
Exactly, yeah.
You couldn't judge that team in that first 5 or 6 games because they were playing on half-decent pitches. Yeah. But by the time you're getting into end of October, beginning of November, it's all beginning to change. And they were actually terrible pitches to actually play on. And I think for people to do that, but as we say, well, I think for people and players to do that is good of what you've said, because you can only contrast with what you might compare it, but you can. I think for me, if you're a good player then, you'd be a good player now. It's as simple as that. And in many respects, the conditions, as you quite rightly have said, that you could play on in now, putting players of your class and putting players of your level onto those pitches. You can't suddenly turn around and say, well, today's players are better than used to be.
No.
You can only contrast what you used to have to play on and what they have now. And I think all great players, and I include you in this, I think all great players would have been great players in whatever era they played in.
No matter what. and particularly, not only that, in different sports as well. I don't know, do you play golf?
No, I'm not a golf man.
No, I didn't think you were.
No,
You're too small.
Yeah,
anyway.
all right then.
Just,
That's
No,
one.
no, I
That's
didn't mean
1-1.
that.
That's
No,
1-1.
okay,
Come
okay.
on. If I draw with Law, it'll be very
you
good.
think of the great players of yesteryear in the golf situation, like Ben Hogan and then Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, who were the greats of that day.
Yes.
They would be the greats of
today.
today, with the different in the clubs and the different in the ball,
Yeah.
the greens, the whole lot. So in any profession, whoever was the top guy or people in those days, if they had the facilities in today, they would be equally the same.
I agree with
There's
that.
no doubt about that. So the great players like Stanley Matthews, which I played against once. I didn't really see him because, don't forget, we didn't have much television in those days anyway. But the ones that you know, Tom Finney, etc., those guys playing today would be equally as great.
Going back, you just mentioned him, Stanley Matthews. I'd mentioned him earlier. And I think it was around about 56, 58 or something like when he became a European Footballer of the Year.
Yes.
He was the only one until you came in 64. What did it feel like in those days when England wasn't all that much associated? There were no Champions League games. There was nothing really. So what did it feel like to be nominated as the European Player of the Year, bearing in mind the names that we could throw that were in line for that trophy?
Without a doubt. That was completely out the blue, a complete shock. When I think I was in Aberdeen serving one of my suspensions.
So it was Christmas time, was it?
Christmas holiday in Aberdeen when I got the message that I had won that. I couldn't believe it, because don't forget, at that particular time, you know, you had the great Real Madrid, you know, who had won 5 European Cups with players who were still playing at the highest level. Puskas and Di Stefano and Hento. These were the European Players of the Year, not me.
Yeah,
so to get
Eusebio was around.
And Eusebio, of course. All that sort of Portugal and Spain was, they were the countries that were producing this fantastic football. So to be, you know, before, I had one of my, people say, what do you remember in your career and what I said, well, to play alongside my hero when we were picked for the rest of the world at Wembley, to celebrate, I think it was England's 100th year, to play alongside Puskas, Gento, Copa, the 4, and Di Stefano. The forward line was that and myself. Could it get any better than that? Never get better than that. And then on the second half, Eusebio came on. So, wow.
You'll remember the result, won't you?
I think the referee wasn't that good because we got beat 2-1.
2-1.
Yeah. Vaguely remember that.
Yeah. But I think that would be around about 63.
1963.
Yeah. Yours truly, I think, was, well, I know was watching that on it was a televised game. That
yes, well, it would be with the cup final, etc. But that, again, when something that happens to you, when you're selected to play for the rest of the world, when other players are not, you just and then to play alongside the guys I played with.
During your career, you would have played with some players, I'm not asking you to name them, who suddenly couldn't see your run. They didn't appreciate your run, or your pass wasn't played. But you played more with players who I suspect you could bounce off with. They were seeing the same kind of things as you did.
Well, you've got to play with good players. Football is a team game. You have star players, but you've got to have other players in the team who are a blend of different type of player. Tough player, want to get stuck in, good pass of the ball, doesn't score many goals, etc. But that's when you have a great team. You can't have 11 great players. You cannot have that in a team. You have to have a blend of different guys. I know when Samat did the team talk, you know, and he's talking about the opposition, I personally don't want to know anything about the opposition. And I always hope he did his team talk on a Friday before the Saturday game, because by the time Saturday came along, I had forgotten everything.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Yeah.
And when he did it on a Saturday, for some reason, I didn't particularly play. I didn't want to know the opposition. I go out and play against them, but I don't want to know them. I don't want to hear story of Chopper Harris kicking people and chopping them down.
You.
No, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear nice things. He'll not kick you, you know, whatever, you know, lovely.
But tell me this then, what was it like playing with Charlton and Best? Because the three of you, I mean, it's just a name, and when you mention those names...
You know as well, being an England manager as well, to have terrific players in your team, the job should be easier than if you didn't.
Yes.
I know that's common sense, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
So to play in a team when you got the likes of George Best and Bobby Charlton in particular, what can you ask for?
Yeah.
Bobby would be outside the box, 30 yards. I couldn't even reach the goal from that distance, maybe, you know, a bit nearer. And when he prepared to shoot, as David heard as well, when they prepared to shoot the goalkeeper, I had a thought, if a goalkeeper saves it, he might not hold it.
Follow up.
And therefore, as soon as I saw them, I would be in. Yeah. So that's a different time. But you, as I say, again, going back being the England manager, you've had great players playing for you. But sometimes they don't gel when they're only played 2 or 3 games, you know, together or whatever. It's, excuse me, it's the most difficult job, I think, in football. I think it's not like a club team, you know, you could sort of get things, and don't forget, you could go and buy somebody to fill that. Internationally, you deal with the players you've got.
I think one of the things sometimes at international football, and it's the only question I will allow you to ask me, you're not going to change this interview.
I'm not.
I know you, Denis Law. I've read this book.
When I was asked to do this, I did look you up last night, late at night.
2 minutes.
Just and your England career, the number of games you played and the number of games you lost was really just... Well, I mean, what did you lose? 7 games in 38 games or something?
Something like that.
Not that many, is it, to be fair?
Well, what I do know,
when you're playing the cream of the world as well.
Is we went to Sweden, and when we lost to the host country, it was only my second defeat in my first 24 games.
Absolutely.
But I'm just saying about, you have these players, you're talking about the blend in a team. Now, you've got the great players I've mentioned. Who was it that gave you the blend? Who was it? Was it Paddy? Was it Nobby Stiles? Was it Kennelly? You know, these people that blended and gave you this team ethos all of the time, so that your great players were like accommodated, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But the others, you know, as Ramsey would say to Nobby Stiles, get the ball and give it to Bobby Charlton or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's a reported thing. But who were these players that, you know, that probably never got the full praise that they deserved in that team, but you knew, and George would know, and Bobby would know, were actually very instrumental to the success of your team?
Well, you've got to say Nobby Stiles for one, Pat Creran for another, Bill Foulkes at that particular time. Bill. So, really, it'd be very difficult to leave out a player, because you've all got to play together. The other thing is, you got a captain, right? Well, I was captain for several years, but basically it's a toss of coin, isn't it? It could be anybody. But when you got 2 or 3 captains in the team, that was when, again, that's the bonus to make the team even better. Hey, you get back this type of thing. Hey, listen, you mark it, you know, boom. So you got 2 or 3 guys, and we had that. We had Nobby Stiles, Pat Creran, myself occasionally if I, you know, would say something, you know, whatever. But that you know, when I played for Scotland, we had Billy Bremner, Dave Mackay, who they're the guys who made Leeds and Spurs. Basically because, hey, you get done here, hey, terrific, that was great. But that thing goes on all the time on the state of the pitch. Not the captain. No. Captains. One tosses a coin. The others direct what we need. Hey, you come back, pick up him. You know that yourself. People don't. The people who watch the game don't see this. But you have to have a really good team, etc. Well, when England won the World Cup, didn't they? They've got several players there, I didn't see the game, as it turns out, but
What a surprise.
what a surprise.
Yeah, tell me this. I mean, we talk about George Best, everybody does. But was there ever any occasion where he frustrated you?
Who?
George Best?
George, yeah, definitely, yeah. Without a doubt, yeah. In fact, I think alongside Jimmy Johnson, I think they two cost me my cartilage operation. Because I would go for the ball
wouldn't come.
and they wouldn't give it.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it?
You little
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
yeah.
So they're holding
on.
on.
And then you'd really argue, and then the next thing, the ball's in the back of the net. So
Well, you've got the thing, in today's thing, you've got a little bit Ronaldo, isn't it? You know, it's a similar thing, isn't it? Fantastic, fantastic player.
my favourite player is Messi.
Oh, yes.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I gave him his European trophy, I think, can't remember now, 2 or 3 years ago in Monaco.
Yeah.
And I'm not big, and it was the first time I met the guy. I think he came up to about here. And I just love the way the guy plays. He gets kicked and everything. He just gets up, bottom, goes on, and then gets the goal.
Yes,
I think he scored something like 70 goals
it's
this
amazing,
season.
isn't it? It's
just
amazing.
like
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah.
And the lovely thing is, he doesn't act or anything. He gets on with the game and just lovely.
And tell me this, because this is, how do you react to being called the king?
Embarrassing.
No,
Absolutely,
but it's an accurate.
yeah.
I'm saying this, and I know I probably have surprised you a little bit because I've never ever, when I've met you previously,
No,
said,
you've never, no.
You're my hero.
That's why I was very surprised, yeah.
Well, there you
I
go.
thought,
We all keep
does
thinking. But
does
you
I
were
owe
the
him
king.
some money or something?
But you were the king. Now, you may say you're embarrassed, but what a title to be given.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah. In today's football, I think most people will realise that playing international football and your clubs pay your money. There is this sort of difference between playing for your club, playing for your country, and some managers don't like them to consistently play for their country. In your time, did you ever get any of that from some, or were they happy for you to be selected internationally? And if you had got pressure on you not to be, or to be unfit, would you have done that? Would you have withdrawn from your international duties and stayed with your club?
Never. And I don't care what the manager, whoever he would be, regarding my playing for my country, to be selected to play for your country is the greatest honour ever. I don't care what any other manager thinks. I don't care about playing for the rest of the world. I don't care about winning the league or whatever. Playing for your country is the greatest thing ever. What an honour to be selected. Don't forget, in that particular days as well, there was 11. There wasn't subs in the early days.
No.
Now, of course, it's 24 in a squad. You could come on 2 minutes from the end and that's a cap.
Yeah.
No, you played the whole 90 minutes. That was playing for your country. What an honour to play for your country.
Yeah.
Can't get any better than that. I don't care wherever I played, you cannot get better than being selected to play for your country.
Yeah. I'm glad you've said that because we come from the same hymn sheet on that. But listen, this is a game I've forgotten what it was, 67. It was England were playing Scotland.
I can't remember that either. No, funny, isn't it strange when you get a bit old, you forget these things.
You forget certain games. The game just coming back to me, and I don't like remembering it. There was a game when Scotland won.
Yeah. Well, I'm not too sure.
I can remember
what year
was
what year was
about 1967.
Was that team that won the World Cup? Was it the year before or something?
I don't really like, I don't really like remember. There's certain things, isn't there, you can't remember, or there are things that you don't like remember.
You don't want to remember.
But that one, Scotland come and beat
you can
England
imagine,
2-1.
You being English,
Yeah.
You come up to Hampden Park, you play in Scotland, and you win. Is there a better feeling in that? I.e., being Scottish, playing at Wembley, don't forget, holders of the World Cup as well. They've not been beaten since whatever.
No,
to win there was lovely. Very nice.
Yeah, I still can't remember it.
And when we go back on the Monday, when Nobby Stiles and Sir Bobby is there as well, it was just nice to say hi.
Two things really now. Your greatest moment in football, and who is, or have you got a hero, a footballing hero? Well, it doesn't have to be a footballing hero.
To be fair, I've already answered your first question.
Yeah.
The greatest moment was being on my first cap for my country, to be selected to represent my country, which was told to me by the news seller in the square in Huddersfield, because they informed the press first before they informed the player.
You.
And he said, I was only 18, Dennis, you've been picked for your country. What? What?
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
The second one, I've already again have answered that as well in the conversation. My favourite player of all time was Di Stefano for Real Madrid.
Yeah.
They were my favourite team.
Yeah.
White, they played in white. It was just like, this is what I would do. Yeah. So Di Stefano was my favourite player.
Dennis, it's been absolutely great talking to you, my footballing hero.
It's nice talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks.